Welcome to this video where we discover what z of alpha over 2 is. In this video, we will also answer the following questions. What is alpha? How do you find alpha given the confidence level of a confidence interval? What is z of alpha over 2? And how do you find z of alpha over 2? Let's get started. First of all, what is alpha? Alpha is the area to the left and right of the middle portion of a confidence interval. Below, a 90% confidence level is illustrated on the standardized normal curve. Notice the x-axis are the z-scores. The area of the shaded region is 0.90. What is left over? Well, remember, the area under the entire curve is 1 or 100%. When we subtract off 0.9 or 90%, 10% remains. Where on the graph is the 10% located? Well, the combined area in the two unshaded regions to the left and right of the shaded region is 10%. That is alpha. How can we calculate alpha? Well, we can calculate it using the equation alpha equals 1 minus the confidence level. So let's look at a 90% confidence level. First, we need to convert this percent to a decimal, 0.9. Then we find that alpha is 1 minus 0.9, which is 0.10. So alpha is 0.10. What about a 95% confidence level? Well, again, we take the percent and convert it to a decimal, and then we subtract that from 1. So in this case, our alpha is 5%. Likewise, if we had a 99% confidence level, we would have 1 minus 0.99, so alpha would be 0.01. These are the three most common confidence levels used in many statistics problems. So now that we understand what we mean by alpha, let's figure out what is z of alpha over 2. So let's start looking at a 90% confidence level. Here you can see an image that shows this 90% that is in the middle of the standardized normal curve. Again, notice that this x-axis is labeled with z-scores. So if 90% of the data lies in this shaded region, what percent is left over? Well, we already said that this 10% is left over, and we said that the 10% is divided evenly between the left side and the right side of this graph. So the unshaded area collectively, again, is referred to as alpha. Because the graph is symmetrical, again, alpha is divided evenly between the left side and the right side of the graph. So the area in the left unshaded region is half of alpha, or alpha over 2. Likewise, the area in the right unshaded region is also half of alpha, or alpha over 2. In this case, our alpha is 10, and half of 10 is 5. So each of these two unshaded regions represents 5% of the total area under the curve. The z-score that separates the bottom 5% of the data from the rest is z equals negative 1.645. Notice that this is an approximation. Likewise, the z-score that separates the top 5% of the data from the rest is z equals positive 1.645. Again, we're having to round here. Notice that these z-scores have the exact same value, but different signs. Since we always want our margin of error to be positive when we calculate it, we have to use the positive z-score in our calculations. So for a 90% confidence level, our alpha is 0.10 and the z of alpha over 2 is 1.645. Let's look at some other common confidence levels. We've already said, again, that for a 90% confidence level, z is about positive 1.645. What about a 95% confidence level? Here we have a z of 1.96. Notice, again, that these two values are exactly the same. One is positive, one is negative, but we need to use the positive value in our calculations. Lastly, if we have a 99% confidence level, we have a z-score of about 2.576. The most Common confidence levels that you will use in this course are 90, 95, and 99%. To save you the trouble of calculating z of alpha over 2 every time, this table is provided for you on your equation sheet. You will be allowed to use this table on all assessments in this course. You should now be able to answer the following questions. What is alpha? Remember, alpha is the area that is left over at the two ends of the confidence interval. How do you find alpha given the confidence level of a confidence interval? Well, alpha is 1 minus your confidence level. Remember, you first have to convert the confidence level from a percent to a decimal in order to do this calculation. What is z of alpha over 2? Well, there are two z-scores that separate the middle, whatever confidence level percent that you're using. So for example, the middle 90% of the data from the rest. These z-scores have the same absolute value and opposite signs. Z of alpha over 2 is a positive value. How do you find z of alpha over 2? You may use the between function in the normal calculator in StatCrunch and enter data for an inverse normal probability. Alternatively, you are also allowed to use the table that is provided on your formula sheet.